In this video, you will learn about properties of multiplication. The properties of multiplication are pretty much the same as the properties of addition. There is a little bit of a difference with some of them, however. So the first one is the closure property. The closure property says that if you multiply an integer with another integer, your answer will still be an integer. Alright, so in math notation, that would be written as, for all integers a and b, then ab, or a times b, is also an integer. So an example with real numbers, here we have 4 is an integer, 5 is also an integer, so 4 times 5, which equals 20, would also be an integer. And that is your closure property. Next we have the commutative property. So the word commute in English means to travel or to move. So the commutative property says that it does not matter if you move or change the order of the numbers you are multiplying. So with math notation, that can be expressed as AB equals BA. A times B is the same thing as B times A. It does not matter the order in which I multiply. So with real numbers, we can say that 4 times 5 is the same thing as 5 times 4. They both equal 20. So it does not matter the order in which I multiply. The associative property says that when I multiply 3 or more numbers together, it does not matter which numbers you multiply first. So in math notation, this can be expressed as you see here, where we have AB in parentheses, we multiply that first, and then multiply C. That is the same thing as multiplying B times C first, and then multiplying it by A. So with real numbers, we could say that if we had 2 times 3 times 4, we could do 2 times 3 first to get 6, and then multiply by 4, or we could take 3 times 4 and multiply that first, and then multiply by 2 after. Either way, we're going to get 24 as our solution. So in English, the word associate means to be a part of or to group, so to speak. So if you were to say that you associate with a group of people, that means you are a part of that group. You are grouped together with them. So same idea, where the associative property says I can group together the numbers differently and still get the same solution. Next we have the identity property. The identity property says that we can multiply by something without changing the identity. So with multiplication, that something would be the number 1. So the number 1 can be multiplied to any number without changing the identity of the original number. And therefore 1 would be called the multiplicative identity. So in math notation, we can say that a times 1, or 1 times a, would equal a. We started with a, multiplied by 1, we still have a when we multiply. So it does not change the identity when I multiply by 1. So with real numbers, we started with 6, multiplied by 1, and our answer is still 6. So that would be your identity property. Next we have the inverse property. The inverse property says that I can multiply something by its inverse to get back to the identity, which would be 1 with multiplication. So if you multiply a number with its multiplicative inverse, your answer will be the identity, which is 1. So in math notation, this would look like this. We have a times the multiplicative inverse would be 1 over a, and that would equal 1. Okay? So with real numbers, if we take 4 and then multiply 4 by the multiplicative inverse, which would be 1 over 4, that would equal 1. 1/4 of 4 equals 1. 1 is your identity. Next we have what is called the zero property. The zero property says that anything multiplied by 0 will equal 0. So in math notation, I could say a times 0 would equal 0. With real numbers, if we started with 4 and then multiplied by 0, my answer would be 0. And I can do this for the biggest number you can think of, and you still multiply by 0, your answer will be 0 no matter what. And to finish off, here is a summary of all the properties that we just discussed. So if you wanted to pause the video here to take a closer look, everything is here in one table where it's easier to read. All right, and that concludes our lesson for today.